So, this is a strange time during the pandemic yet again. I think a lot of people are making choices to stay as safe as possible. And we're doing that here on the field too. I'm the only person unmasked. We've been unmasking only one person on the beam at a time, even outdoors. The rest of us are masked here. We also don't yet have a minion on the field. So I'm going to begin slowly with Ashrei at the beginning of our service, either on 214 in Lev Shalem, it's 223, or if you're in the newer Slim Shalom. And we'll start with Ashrei, and we'll go to the following page. And if we then don't yet have a minion on the field, then we'll have our Ba'alat Kriya, our Torah reader, go ahead and read for us from the Parsha, from a Chumash instead. We'll see. But let's begin with Ashrei. Again, if you're in the Lev Shalem, which we have here on the field, page 214. אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יללוך סלע, אשרי העם שככה לו, אשרי העם שאדוני אלוהיו, תהילה לדוד, ארמים חלם. תהילת אדוני ידבר פי, ויברך ובשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד. ואנחנו נברך ימי אתה ויד עולם, הללויה. ובא לציון גואל ושב יפה ביעקב מאום אדוני ונזר. ואתה קדוש יושב תהילות ישראל, וקרא זל זה ויאמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו, קבלי דמיתם. ותישאני רוח ושמע אחרי כל רעש גדול, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, תלתני רחה ושמע. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען תיקו, יגדיל תורה וידיר. So we are still shy a minion here on the field, which means that we're going to move to our Torah learning for the afternoon instead of Torah reading for the afternoon. So I'm going to invite Rosemary forward in just a moment. We'll be reading from Parshat Bishalach. It's an exciting parsha, even the beginning part without Shirat Hayam. I'm excited. So Bishalach, if you're in your Eitz Chaim Chumashim, you can find on page 300. You can find on page 399, and that's the equivalent of chapter 13, verse 17 in any Hebrew Bible. And when I invite Rosemary up here, she's going to start with the blessing la'asok b'divrei Torah so that we can still frame our Torah reading in the context of blessing. So Rosemary, when you're ready, you can come on up and read.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעשות דברי תורה. ויהי בשלח פרעה את העם ולא נחם אלוהים דרך ארץ פלישתים, כי קרוב הוא, כי אמר אלוהים, פן ינחם העם, בראותם מלחמה, ושבו מצרימה, ויסב אלוהים את העם, דרך המדבר ים סוף, וחמושים עלו בני ישראל בארץ מצרים. ויקח משה את עצמות יוסף עמו, כי השפח השביע את בני ישראל לאמור, פקוד יפקוד אלוהים אתכם, והעליתם את עצמותי מזיתכם, וייסעו מסוכות, ויחנו ביתם בקצה המדבר. ואדוני הולך לפניהם יומם, בעמוד ענן להנחותם הדרך, ולילה בעמוד אש להאיר להם ללכת יומם ולילה. לא ימיש עמוד הענן יומם, ועמוד האש לילה לפני העם. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל, וישובו, ויחנו לפני פי החירות, בין מגדול ובין הים, לפני בעל צפון, נכחו תחנו על הים. ואמר פרעה לפני ישראל, נבוכים הם בארץ, סגר עליהם המדבר. וחיזקתי את לב פרעה, ורדף אחריהם, ויקבדה בפרעה ובכל חילו, וידעו מצרים כי אני אדוני, ויעשו כן. ויוגד למלך מצרים, כי יברך העם, ויהפך לבב פרעה ועדדיו אל העם, ויאמרו מה זאת עשינו, כי שילחנו את ישראל מעובדינו. ויסור את רכבו ואת עמו לקח עמו, ויקח 600 רכב בחור, וכל רכב מצרים, ושלישים על כולו. ויחזק אדוני את לב פרעה מלך מצרים, וירדוף אחרי בני ישראל, ובני ישראל יוצאים מיד רמה. Thank you.
Yishar kochach to Rosemary for reading for us so beautifully. Before we move away from this Torah chanting and into the Amidah section, is there anybody first here on the field who intended to say an El Malei Rachamim in honor of the anniversary of the death of a loved one? Is there anybody who is present on Zoom who has a yard site this week and who would like an El Malei said in honor
Yes,
of that one?
yes. This is Aviva Landa. This is for Isaac Landa, Zichrono Livracha, father of Ronen Landa.
Oh, I can't believe this is the yard site already. Wow.
2 years already.
Oh, I can't.
And Rabbi Chorny,
Yes,
it's me, Vered. It's 2 years for Boaz. Today is
today as well.
the yard site. We did it all the time together with Ronan.
Yep.
We was at the same time.
I forgot that it was the same day. It is
Yeah.
truly amazing. So I will I'll first do for Isaac and then I'll go to Boaz's El Male, okay? So
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Aviva, what was Isaac's Hebrew name?
יצחק,
Mhm.
יצחק יוסף, בן חונה וזלדה לנדה.
Okay. Hilmali rachamim shochein
Dovik,
bamromim
בוא
hamitzvah
מיד.
menucha nechona tachat kanfei shechina v'malot kedoshim utorim kezor rakia mashirim lenishmat Yitzchak Yosef ben Chunave. What was his mother's name, Aviva? Zelda? וזלדה שלח לעולמו בגן עדן די מנוחתו הנבא לרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן. Aviva, is there a particular memory that's coming to mind right now? Oh, you got to unmute for that, though. Hang on, because we can't hear. Hector, maybe you can help us out.
Okay.
There we go.
Well, Ronen put a very nice post about his father, that he's missing him, seeing the children growing up. He loves the grandchildren, he loves his children, and he's very, very much missed. For me too. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bivakasha, Bivracha, to speak of him and to say a blessing in his name. And I have to say, it was such a blessing to hear of him at the Hanukkah monologues this year, to hear a little bit more of the story from
Yes.
Ronen's perspective.
Yes.
It was really beautiful.
Yeah,
I
thank
hope
you.
that memories are always spoken for a blessing in his name. So
Thank
Yeh
you.
Zechro Baruch.
Thank you.
And now we'll turn to you, Vered and Dov, I assume, and thinking of Boaz this week. Can you remind me, please, of his name? I always remember that he has a very full name. Oh, hang on, we have to unmute though, Vered.
Somebody mute. Okay.
There we go.
So Boaz's name was Boaz Yaakov. Ben
Boaz.
Beret Vedov. Yeah, Boaz Yaakov.
Hilmali rachamim shochein b'meromim hametzeim nuchat nechona tachat kanfei השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוכר הרקיע מסעירים את נשמת בועז יעקב בן דור וורד שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן די מנוחתו הנע על הרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
Right, Rabbi Chorney,
Yes.
I have your side.
You also have yard side. So, Annette, in just a moment, I'll turn to you. First, I just want to give an opportunity to Dov and Vered if they have any memories of Boaz that are coming to mind in particular this day, this second yard site. And just be sure to unmute before you speak.
Can't believe that it's 2 years. Just looks yesterday. I'm sorry, I can't talk now.
It's okay, Vered. And I can't believe that it's 2 years either. And I think each of us has events by which we mark the time before the time that we've all lost over these 2 years of COVID. Boaz's death is one of them for me. Now I'll try to remember also Yitzchak is a twin yard site. I for some reason I hadn't paired those two together, even though obviously the two of you have this miniature kahila with your families.
Yeah, but you know, I remember during all the year that we say Kaddish, that Brent told me that I will be a different person and that it will take a toll on us in different ways that we didn't know, but we are. And it's very challenging. And I remember Brent telling this to us about his mother and about his brother at the time. And I also remember him bringing his mom to one of those minyanim, and she talked about it. And so it's been very challenging. And I know Boaz would like to see Avital going to high school at Milken and see his son Dean playing basketball. That was Boaz's dream. Boaz was very tall and he played all sports. So there's a lot of things missing for him and for us. That's for now.
Vered and Dov, we will continue to celebrate the beauty in your family in honor of Boaz, and all of us will continue to be with you as you miss him. He is missed. He leaves behind a terrible, gaping memory and also wonderful memories of him. There's just a hole where we wish that he could be with us to witness the growth of your family going forward. And we're so grateful that you remain a part of this community as this loss still feels so fresh. And Yehi Zichro Baruch, may his memory continue to be for a blessing. And now we'll turn to you, Annette, because you said, I think I caught that you said you have a yard site, yeah?
Yes, I do. My brother.
For your brother, this is for your younger brother?
No, this is my older one. I had for my younger brother the other day. Your
brother-
4 days
Okay,
apart from each other.
Oh.
This was a young man who died at 41. He left 4 children. He had been in the Second World War. He was wounded and during the invasion of Europe. He was wounded and recovering when my other brother was killed. But he also was a sweet young man. He left 4 children. And I feel so much for Vered and Boaz, but there's some losses that just, although that loss was so many years ago, it still shakes me. Anyway, his name was Shaul, and Ben Sholem Ufesha.
So what was his full Hebrew name, Annette?
Shaul. Saul. Shaul.
Oh, Shaul, Ben.
We called him, my parents said Shell, but now I know it was the name for Saul.
Okay, so Shaul, Ben, and what were your parents' names?
Shalom Ufesha.
Fasha, Shalom, Fasha. Elmalei rachamim, shochein bamromim, hamsem nucha nechona tachat kanvei shchina, b'malot kirushim u'shorim kezoar rakim hasirim, lenishmat Shaul ben Shalom Fesha, shalach li olamo, b'gan eden menuchato, ana bal rachamim, astireihu b'seiter knafecha leolamim, utzror b'tzror achayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuch b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar amen. And may this brother's memory be bound up in the bonds of life, just like all of your family members lost, all of our family's members lost. Yehi Zichro Baruch. Is there anybody else who has an El Mali to be said today? Joe, did you have somebody?
I have a yard site for my grandmother, Celia Lubelski, who died, whose yard site is this coming Tuesday. Unfortunately, I don't know her full Hebrew name.
That's okay. Do you know her parents' Hebrew names?
No, I know her Hebrew name was Tzipporah. I don't know the parents' names though.
Okay, so why don't we say her English name in the place of her name? What was it again? Shirley?
No, Celia.
Oh, Syria? Okay.
Celia, Celia.
Celia. And last name?
Lubelski.
Lubelski. Okay.
Her
Got it.
parents' names, I think, were Samuel and Anne
Okay.
in English.
So we'll say Celia Lubelski because we know that was her name.
Okay.
Okay.
28th yard site. Thank you.
המה לרחמים שוכן במרומים, אמצי מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי שכינה, במעלות, קדושים ושרים כזוהר, הרקיע מזהירים, לנשמת סיליה לופלסקי שלחה לעולמה, וגנית תהא מנוחתה, הנבל הרחמים, הסתירי בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור חיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר amen. Joe, is this a yard site that you take on behalf of a parent?
Yes, because both of my parents have passed.
Joe, what a beautiful mitzvah that you can remember your grandmother going on 28 years. May her memory be for a blessing as well as your parents. Thank you for being here with us and for remembering her with us.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so we'll continue now with the whispered Amidah, unless I missed anybody sneaking in behind me. No? Well, it gave us some time, but we're still without a minion on the field, which means we'll go to the whispered private Amidah. So we turn back to our Sidurim. Invite you to rise and recite the private whispered Amidah for Shabbat afternoon. It's found on page 223 in Sidor Lev Shalem, or wherever in your Sidor you find the Shabbat afternoon Amidah. If you haven't yet completed your own private Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We'll go on to Aleinu now, so you can remain standing or rise if you are seated. In Lev Shalom, we're on 231. Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol. Kakatu b'toratech Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yihyeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad. Mourners, Kaddish, if you're in Lev Shalom, run 232. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah v'yama divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chaye decho beit Yisrael ba'agala u'bizman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei tekudsha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata damiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Hoseh shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Thank you to Rosemary for reading for us at Mincha. It's nice to be gathered all together, even when a good chunk of us are online. We feel the spirit, the collective spirit. We're going to take a few moments now to nourish ourselves. So wherever you are, go get yourself perhaps a little something to eat and or drink. Here on the field, we're going to do the same. Throwing my mask back on in just a moment, and we'll reconvene for some learning on poetry, some beautiful learning I anticipate in the continued series with our rabbinic resident, Julia Novlach. And we'll come back to that. And what do you say? 10, 15 minutes? No. Would you say like in about 10 minutes or in 15 minutes? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. About 10 minutes or so. So we'll see you in a little bit.
right, so welcome to the poetry learning part of this afternoon. Today I brought a poem by Dalia Ravikovic, who is considered by many to be one of the greatest female Hebrew Israeli poets. And just a few words about her. She was born in 1936 in Ramat Gan, and she died in 2005. She lost her father pretty early on in her life, and then her mother remarried, and they moved to a kibbutz, and which Dalia left when she was 13 because she didn't feel she didn't feel part of the life there, and probably all sorts of other things. And so she grew up in foster families until she was an adult, and she was married a few times. She had one son, but when she got divorced, she lost custody of him. And she had a very prolific creative life. She was a journalist, she was a high school teacher, she was a translator, and obviously she was a very productive poet. But she just basically eked out a life. Like, she never got, even though she got the Israel Prize and was considered, as I said, as a very great poet, but she didn't, in terms of, she was never got the professional kind of sort of like enumeration of sorts for all the work that she did. She is also known, especially in later years, for her political activism, very much against a lot of Israeli settlement policies. The one poem and maybe the second we're going to look at tonight do not deal with that, but it is definitely part of her curriculum and part of who she was. She suffered from depressions, and when she died, people in 2005, she was found dead in her apartment by herself, alone, and people assumed at first it might have been a suicide. It was later affirmed that it wasn't, that she had died of heart failures. Yeah, she was a very creative person, and she had a lot of, as I think this poem is going to symbolize, a lot of power and a lot of visionary language in her, but I think she also was a very lonely and sad person sometimes. So I did know of her, but to prepare for this learning, I delved more into her and read up about her a lot, and I was really impressed by her, and also, yeah, taken by this poet's life. So the poem that I brought in Hebrew is called Bo Yavo, and it is translated as "He shall surely come." And as you know, I'm trying hard to get a connection to the weekly parsha that is in which I am teaching, and we are in Parashat Bo, so it was more of a word alliteration sort of association that made me remember her. The more I read about it, though, the more I read this poem and the more I thought about it, I realized how fitting it is actually for this parasha, because in this parasha the redemption of the Israelites is beginning, right? Describes how the Israelites are being taken out of Egypt, which is considered a redemptive event, and everything in this poem, I want to talk with you then once we've read it, with you about it, like how it sort of expresses the anticipation of something that might be considered a redemptive event. It is unclear what it is. There are some suggestions in the text that we can talk about, but for now I just want to first read it and then say more about the poem. And I'm going to read it first in Hebrew and then in English. The printout that you have in person are a little blurred, so forgive for that. It's just the nature of what happened. And the source sheet for those online, I think the link was to a folder, so you should have two documents in there. One is the PDF, and the other one, which is the Hebrew one, is actually a screenshot, so it's a picture. So, and you may have to, unless you have already done it, of course, there should be two, and if you don't see them right away, you may want to click inside the folder. There are two attachments. בוא יבוא. שנים נוקפות עליי בתרדמה חושים, I need to, I can't see this. ובכסה הדעת ובגנבת הדעת, עד שיפציע ראש זעיר, אדום כמו כדור חמה בשקיעתו. בוא יבוא. ברחבי המדבר, מאות קילומטרים לכאן ולכאן, אין שמץ דבר דומה לזה. יש לי כוח התאפקות בלתי נלאה. אני ישנה הרבה, אני מחכה הרבה. כשהוא יגיע, הוא ייראה. לפעמים אני מתחפשת למתה. כשהאדם נוהג מנהג משונה, השכנים מותחים עליו ביקורת, ומתלחשים באחרי גבו. בציפייה בלתי נלאה, אני נופחת בהרוגים האלה שיחיו. רק מעטים אמנה העזו והיו שעה קלה. לאחרים שוב לא הבאתי שום תועלת. אני שותקת ואוטמת את אוזניי לגערות השוק. וצבעתם האיומה של הרוכלים. רק לעתים אני צועקת מחמת הזעם. מיד אני נוזפת בעצמי שכך קרה. אובדן שליטה עצמית. עליי להניח לזה. עליי להבליק חורף וקיץ. עד שיפציע ראש אדום, פניני ורח, כמותו עין לא ראתה. He shall surely come. Years are passing me by in a slumber of senses, and absent-mindedness, and in deceit, until a tiny head breaks through, red as the ball of the setting sun. He shall surely come. In the broad expanses of the desert, hundreds of kilometers on every side, there's not a hint of anything like it. I have a tireless capacity for self-control. I sleep a lot. I wait a lot. When he shall arrive, he shall be seen. Sometimes I play as dead. When a person acts peculiarly, the neighbors criticize him and whisper behind his back. With a tireless expectation, I breathe upon these slain that they may live. Only a few indeed dared and lived for a short time. I was of no use to the others again. I am silent and shut my ears to the scoldings of the marketplace and the horrible screaming of the peddlers. Only sporadically do I cry out because of the anger. Immediately, I scold myself that this had happened, a loss of self-control. I must let it be. I must show forbearance winter and summer, until a redhead breaks through, pearl-like and soft, the like of which no eye has ever seen. So I think this is a very powerful poem. There's the anticipation of something that alike no eye has ever seen. And as it said earlier, there's another where it says, nothing like this is known, has happened before. And before I share a few of the things that I think about the poem, I wanted to ask you here or on Zoom, and you know how it goes. You unmute yourself by yourself when you want to say something. what comes up for you? What kind of atmosphere? What do you think what's going on here with the speaker? Jeff. Yes, so Jeff said that there's an anticipation of the speaker for her son or husband to arrive, or daughter to arrive. Sure, I mean there is definitely an illusion of birth. I want to say, especially in the first stanzas, right? Because of the sort of comparison between until a red head will appear, which sort of like suggests a birth, a head coming out of a woman while she's giving birth. So I do think I also thought that there is an allusion to potential birth or the arrival of someone that someone is really waiting for. And it totally works. And at the same time, I also think that there's another level. I think it's a comparison, and I think there might be something even bigger than the arrival of a specific person. I don't know. Remind me your name, please. Rebecca. Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's beautiful. Rebecca was saying that it reminds her of a flower breaking through the desert soil, right? Because of the mentioning of seasons towards the end of the poem, a red flower. Yeah, I like that. Is there? I see there's a hand up, but I can't unmute you. So, Gary and Marissa. Marlis, sorry. There's shake. Oh, you don't want to say anything? You're having your hand up, so okay. Okay, I don't see anybody else. Does anybody else want to say something here? What do you mean the third part? Can you quote what you're talking about? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is your name, please, again? Donald. He was saying that he is wondering how does it work that that there's the anticipation of this event, and where is the speaker basically located, because how is it connected to, how does it go, this very internal sort of location of the speaker and the mentioning of the people in the market and the gossipers and the peddlers. I was wondering about that too, and I think it has to do with how she sets up, how the poet sets up like how she situates the speaker, because I think there's a lot of juxtapositions going on in this poem, and I think the desert on one hand, where potentially this event that no eye has ever seen as of yet is going to happen, be it a birth, the arrival of a loved person, a flower, or something else that we can't really grasp. And the city, the people, the mundane sort of like day to day, and I think that it speaks to the isolation of the speaker, because I feel the speaker is somewhere in between, the desert, and definitely distanced from the people in the marketplace, and I think it is voluntarily so. It's the speaker doesn't want to have anything to do with the people, and I think she's withdrawing and isolating herself in, it's so often repeated in like tireless self-control, sleeps a lot, waits a lot, is silent, shuts the ears in order to get herself away from the mundanity of what surrounds her. And I think because she maybe thinks that whatever she's waiting for and preparing herself for, because I think it is the preparation of to receive some whatever is going to arrive in a place that is not where she is and not with other people. So I think they go together by being opposites, by being contrasted. Um, yeah. When the when sometimes I disguise myself. Are we looking at the English or the Hebrew? Anglit. The sometimes I disguise myself as dead. Right. I think she just. I think that. So Jeff was saying I am still wondering how these things go together. How there's a person describing how she arrives, how she waits for someone who shall arrive and be seen, and sometimes disguises herself even as dead. How it goes together with the following mentioning of the people. I think it is to build up a contrast. I think it is to show how distant the person is and how she does not want to relate. It doesn't necessarily flow out of another. I think it's a contrast. I think the person when a person acts peculiarly, the neighbors criticize him and whisper behind his back. And I think that even though it's speaking about a person in the masculine form, but I think it's a person rather than a man. So it can be actually the poet speaking who feels that the neighbors are criticizing him or her for whatever he's doing. Because when imagine the person sleeping a lot, waiting a lot, um, you know, disguising her or himself as dead and tirelessly self-controlling themselves. That's not taking part of in society. That's not being part of that's acting peculiarly in might be considered in some people's eyes. So I do think it is, on one hand, I think it has a very prophetic level that really transcends a specific individual experience of a specific person, and at the same time, I do think there is a very individual. The individual is definitely built up there to be different from the rest of the people, and so there are a lot of things that we already that sort of came up in passing about like the energy and atmosphere that's being built up in this poem, about how there's a lot of silence, there's a lot of sleeping, there's a lot of waiting. It's really repeated, and I think with this the tireless expectation and the tireless self-control and waiting a lot, it really builds up. It really builds up to basically the last line, the anticipation of an event, the like of which no eyes has ever seen. And I was wondering about, this could be, we associate redemption with something positive, and it is obviously, and at the same time, it is also an awesome event, where we use this word a lot when we talk about events in Torah or in Tanakh, right? Because on one hand, they're good, they're like generated by God, so they are great and good, and at the same time, they're so immense that they are also scary and can be fear-inducing, which is this word that works so perfectly in English for this kind of situation. This awesome has both of it in it, and that's sort of like what I feel here. And talking about biblical references or biblical echoes, I just wanted to point out in the Hebrew, obviously it works more than in the English. There's the word tardema, which is in one of the first lines. It it is in the first line, which is a word that comes up when in Bereshit, when Adam, when God creates Adam, and takes out the rib and creates Eve subsequently. Then Adam is in Tardema, and the word that comes up again is just before the covenant of the pieces, also in Bereshit, when Abraham is like a deep sleep falls over Abraham, and then he sees the vision of his descendants being in Egypt and coming back, and obviously the cutting of the pieces. And all this also very awesome situation that goes on in that covenant. So that word is used, which is also part of what Ravikovic was doing a lot. While she was a modernist person and very like I don't know if she would have described herself as a feminist, but she obviously was a female person, one of the few leading women poets in the 1950s in Israel, which don't even have to be in Israel for it's something that requires obviously a lot of strength and a lot of modernism, but of course she also used a lot of biblical echoes and was very well read in it. And the other thing is a direct quote from Ezekiel. It is line 19. Which is translated here as, it's line 18 and line 19. It's Betsipi'a bilti nil'et ani nofachat beharogim ha'ele sheyichyu. It's a quote from Ezekiel. I have it 30. What is the ones with the bones? The vision of the dead bones, dry bones. 37, 39. Hold on, it's here. Chapter 37, Ezekiel, is about when he sees the dry bones, so that life is going to be breathed into them again. That's the direct quote from that, which is also interesting in terms of like what kind of redemptive event is anticipated here. What else do I have? Yes, also in terms of how is this describing, does it have more juxtapositions and opposites? So there's this one is the desert and the marketplace and the loneliness and the isolation and the gossiping and the silence, that I am silent a lot, and then the gossiping and the criticizing of the peddlers and the gossipers in the marketplace. Then we have the Tadema, the big sleep and the slumber of senses that is on the speaker in the first line, and that is contrasted a lot with tireless. Like it's interesting. Like there's the slumber that is mentioned, and there's a lot of sleep that is mentioned, and at the same time there's a lot of tension and agitation in that poem. But as she says herself, very self-controlled. So I thought this was very interesting. The silence that is mentioned and the occasional shouting that comes out. And then what's described in the beginning and the end, the breaking through of this red head, of this head red as the sun, which breaking through and birth and the flower blossoming and the arrival of someone is like the beginning, is like the exit of something, but then it's like compared to Bishkiato, to the setting of the sun. So I thought it was very interesting in terms how it balances different emotions and times, and all of this really contributes, I find, a lot to this very prophetic nature of this poem. 5:20. We still have a little time if someone still wants to add something. If not, oh yes, Rebecca. Yeah, thank you. Rebecca was saying that maybe what she's waiting for is the breakthrough of her own creativity, and that it sort of describes the a process even more than writing. Just it's more than just a writing process. She said it's more than waiting to. There is the anticipation of a release, right, in it, and I thought of this too. It's like the release of control, the release of the self-control might also be the release finally of like an unbound sort of like creativity and just going with that awakening of senses, contrasted to the slumber of senses. Yeah. Yes, that's basically like one of most of the things that I wanted to bring up. I have a short poem that I could just read, and we could end on that. It's the other poem that is in this book, the Hebrew poem itself, which is an amazing book. And I'm just going to read the second poem that they chose, and they obviously chose it on purpose. This curated by very more expert in Hebrew poetry than I am. I don't know even more what glasses to wear, so I'm just going to do it without them. And it is called Gava, Pride. אפילו סלעים נשברים אני אומרת לך, ולא מחמת זקנה. שנים רבות הם שוכבים על גבם, בהם ובקור. שנים כה רבות. כמעט נוצר רושם של שלווה. אין הם זזים ממקומם, וכך נסתרים הבקיעים, מעין גבעה. שנים רבות עוברות עליהם בציפייה. מי שעתיד לשבר אותם עדיין לא בא. ואז האזוב מזגזג, האצות נגרושות והחיים מגיח וחוזר. ודומה הם ללא תנועה. עד שיבוא כלב ים קטן להתרחק על הסלעים, יבוא וילך. ופתאום האבן פצועה. אמרתי לך, כשסלעים נשברים, זה קורה בהפתעה. ומה גם אנשים. Even rocks break, I tell you, and not of old age. They lie on their backs in the heat and the cold for many years, so many years, and almost create an impression of serenity. They do not budge from their place, and so the cracks are hidden, a kind of pride. Many years pass by them in anticipation. He who is destined to break them has not yet arrived, has not yet come. And then the moss flourishes, and the seaweed swirl, and the sea flows and ebbs. And it seems that they are motionless, until a little seal comes to rub himself against the rocks, comes and goes. And suddenly the stone is wounded. I told you, when the rocks break, it happens surprisingly. And how much the more so people. So in the Hebrew, there are a lot of the same words that are used, the breakthrough and the wounds and the coming, of course, of breaking something, Rebecca, in terms of, there's this, the seal comes and then the rock breaks. And while it means something different in this poem, there's the same sort of play with these words of breaking open, wounding, because these words go together in the Hebrew, and the time span until this will happen. And with this time span, we've reached, I think, time for Mariv or for Birkat Hamazon. Thank you. Thanks for all your comments. Thank you. we can sing Shir Hamalot. אז ימלא צחוק פינו ולשוננו רינה, אז יאמרו הגויים, הגדיל אדוני לעשות מלך, הגדיל אדוני לעשות מלך, היינו שמחים. שוב אדוני את שיבתנו כאפיקים בנגב, הזועים ברינה, ברינה יקצורו, הלוך ילכו בחוף, נושא משך חזרה, בוא יבוא ברינה, נושא אלומותיו. חבריי נברך. יהי שם אדוני מבורך מעתה ועד עולם. ברשות חברי נברך שאכלנו משלו, ברוך שאכלו משלו ובטוח היינו, ברוך הוא ברוך שמו. Oh, so I don't say Baruch. And I say El Melech, El Melech, El Melech Ne'eman Yisrael Shema. Should I start? Hmm? Oh, please go.
All right, we thank Julia for a beautiful teaching. I really enjoyed that poem a lot. I agree with Rebecca that I was also hearing it notes of maybe the author's inspiration coming through. So I really enjoyed not only the teaching but also listening to other people's responses to the teaching. We're going to continue now with weekday Mariv. Again, we don't have a minion here on the field, so since we don't, we'll be calling page numbers throughout to let you know what we'll be skipping, which means you can begin seated because even though we start at the Baruch Hu, we'll be skipping the Baruch Hu itself. So we'll begin now with Mariv.
But I am starting with the same, right? With the והוא רחום יכפה עוון ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיב אפו ולא יאיר כל חמתו, אדוני הושיע המלך יננו ויום קראנו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. הוא מביא יום ומביא לילה, הוא מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. אהבת עולם ישראל. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נהג יומם בלילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. אל מלך נאמן. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל, לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה, זה לי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. ושמות צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני שומע עמו ישראל לעד. כי המלכות שלך היא לעולם עד לעלמדה עד תמיד בכבוד. כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו. We're skipping Chatzi Kaddish and we're doing the silent Amidah, which is in the Left Shalom on page 270. So we are going to continue. We are going to continue with Aleinu, which is on page 281. עלינו לשבח לדון הכל, לתת גאולה יוצא בראשית, שלא עשה משפטות האדמה, שלא עשה מתקנים. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. We do say Mourner's Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, ואמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו והכל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו והכל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. Okay. Amazing.
So grab your Havdalah sets at home. We're going to do Havdalah up here.
Let me take this out of the way. Just so I'm done.
I'll get the candles lighting and you can.
Hold the candle. I'll do I'm not yet so firm in this melody that you do. I want to do the Minha, Yeshua. Can we do that? I've done it here before. You don't want, if you want to do the other melody, you would have to leave because I want to do that. Sure. הנה אל ישועתי, אפתח ולא אפחד, כי עוזי וזמרת אדוני, ויהי לי לישועה, ושפתם מים בששון. ממענה הישועה, לאדוני הישועה על עמך, ברכתך סלע, אדוני צבאות עמנו. משגב לנו אלוהי יעקב סלע, אדוני צבאות אשרי אדם בוטח בך, אדוני הושיע המלך יננו ויום קוראנו, ליהודים אתה. אוהימך וששון יקר, כן תהיה לנו, כוס ישועות אשא ובשם אדוני אקרא. Savi Chavraim, Baruch. Should we sing it? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei mine besamim borei mine besamim Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei haesh borei meorei haesh Dai 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 ya dai 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 ya dai 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam המבדיל בין קודש לחול, בין אור לחושך. בין ישראל לעמים, בין יום השביעי לששת ימי המעשה. ברוך אתה אדוני, המבדיל בין קודש לחול. שבוע טוב, 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 אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי. במהרה בימינו יבוא עלינו עם משיח בן דוד, עם משיח בן דוד. שבוע טוב, everyone on Zoom.